Alright guys, Mekkah here. Quick video on Pokemon Sword and Shield because people have been asking me about it. I've got some Pokemon Emerald Battle Factory in the background. It's from the same save file from when I streamed this game a long time ago. Had a lot of fun with that one, so the highlight probably being that shiny Swallow I got. Might speed the footage up a bit because the animations and the HP bar can be kind of slow at times, we'll see, but some good battles in there, so hope you have fun. But really, what I'm here to talk about is, of course, Pokemon Sword and Shield for the Switch, which comes out very soon actually, November the 15th, it kind of snuck up on me. So sometimes when I stream, people ask me if I'm going to buy these games, so I thought this would be a good opportunity to talk about that, and the whole Dexit thing and the Sword and Shield controversy in general. Now, real quick, I'm not really going to talk about the leaks that popped up recently, or any new Pokemon in particular. I'm just going to talk about the game in very general terms. The one thing I might mention, but probably won't, is the number of new Pokemon versus the number of old Pokemon that made it into these games. And that's it, but probably not. So to answer that question real quick, no, I am probably not going to buy these new games. Definitely not at launch. And I'm only going to buy them eventually if they look a lot better to me post-release than they are looking right now. Because right now, I'm just not impressed. Now, to be fair, I haven't purchased a new Pokemon game since X and Y. I completely skipped over the Sun and Moon generation, so this is not the biggest development for me or anything. I just haven't been into Pokemon as much as I used to be. But leaving that aside for a moment, this game just doesn't look good to me. So basically that makes for two reasons for me not to buy this right away. Number one is I don't know if I will get my money's worth when I put down 60 euros for this. And number two, I don't want to use my money to support a company that, in my opinion, takes their consumers for granted and puts minimal effort into their games. Now, I'm not just talking about the national deck situation here, but also just the general laziness of the game, the lack of passion that's gone into it, and the resulting PR that they put out for this. In case you've been living under a rock when it comes to Pokemon news, here's a quick summary so you're caught up. It's only going to take me like 30 seconds. So, during E3, Masuda, one of the big brains behind Pokemon nowadays, announced that Sword and Shield would only have the Pokemon from the Galar decks implemented into it for technical limited reasons or something. Now this was the leading cause for a huge shitstorm in the Pokemon community, as Pokemon so far has always had a national dex feature where every Pokemon from previous games could eventually be obtained, and now many people's favorites would simply not be programmed into the game at all, so they couldn't get in there. And the reason behind this, the technical difficulties were scrutinized pretty heavily because, well, in a nutshell, Pokemon Sword and Shield honestly didn't really look all that much better than previous games, and while the game was still getting a price increase from $20 over the 3DS games, like $20. Now in addition, it's looking like the models used in Sword and Shield are simply copies of future-proof ones made in the 3DS games. So there would be no need to make new ones. We don't know this for 100%, but I've seen some pretty convincing posts on the subreddit about it, so I'm going to take it for granted. We'll see when it gets data mined, but I'm pretty sure they're correct. And, you know, after all the raging online, Masuda responded on the Pokemon.com website with like a complete non-apology. Like the closest thing to a promise that he put there was like, even if a specific Pokemon is not available in Sword and Shield, that doesn't mean it won't appear in future games, which is not very satisfying. Not a very soothing thing to say to people who are having their favorites left behind in a series that's got a catchphrase called catching them all. So this statement had about the opposite effect, you know. Before that statement was made, the shitstorm actually almost died down, but this flared it right back up again, so good move. So that's what happens. And now there's a lot of people online calling for like boycotts and hoping this game will do poorly and that Game Freak will see the error of their ways. And if you want that to happen eventually, then yeah, boycotting the game is a pretty good way to go about it. Of course, it does mean that if you boycott this game, you're not going to be able to play it on launch day with your friends. And if you're a PokeTuber, then you're going to miss out on all these juicy views and ad revenue. But not buying this game is the only way that there's a chance that they're going to listen to your complaints, because companies only need to listen to money. No matter how much you may protest online, no matter how much you retweet hashtag bring back national decks, as long as you buy the game, you send them the signal that what they're doing is good enough for you and that you're going to spend your money on it, and that's all they care about. I'm not saying that this is bad or immoral, that's just how companies work. Now, don't get me wrong, if you're excited for this game and you're going to buy Sword and Shield, I'm not judging you for it. If you're happy with the way Pokemon is right now and you're getting out of this what you want to get out of this, then absolutely, go out and buy it and don't feel bad about it, and don't let anyone tell you that you should feel bad about it. It's the way the free market works, I guess. There's like reasons to complain about this, but hey, don't give anyone a hard time for doing what they like. But I think this whole controversy has brought up something that's been missing from the Pokemon fandom for a long time, and that is a willingness to look critically at the series. I remember people were fairly grumpy at Ultra Sun and Ultra Moon. As far as I know, there's been a lot of features in previous entries as well that deserve some criticism, more than they kind of got. But like I said, as long as people still buy the games, they don't have any reason to listen to feedback. But it's a trade-off for people. If you don't buy the game, then you don't get to enjoy it along with everyone else, and that is a pretty big price to pay. And I think some people calling for a boycott might not realize just how bad that could be for some people. Like, they really want to play their game. It requires a lot of willpower. And by the way, if you're saying you're going to buy it used instead of new because of the controversy, that's not really a good way to go about it if you want to protest. Because you are not the only one, but there is a limited number of used copies out there, probably less than there's people wanting it, meaning the demand is bigger than the supply. And I'm willing to bet that a lot of people who want to buy it used and end up being unable to, they will cave in and buy a new one anyway. I kind of fucked up on reading my half-ass script there, but you know what I mean, right? There's not enough used copies for everyone, so some people, they might end up not buying it after all, but a lot of them will just buy it new. So even if you do manage to get a hold of a used copy for like 30 or 40 bucks, you're still putting someone else into a position where they'll likely have to buy one for 60 anyway. I'm not saying that's entirely your responsibility, but as a way to protest, it's a pretty weak one, because in the end, they're still basically getting $60 for you getting the game. It just goes about it in a different way. But used copies don't exist in a vacuum. Speaking of weak protest, if there's one thing I would judge you for, is if you're one of those people making a big stink about this online, calling for a boycott, but you still end up buying the game yourself on launch day. That, I think, would be massive hypocrisy. I actually don't have anyone in mind talking about this. I haven't followed this extensively, so I'm not like trying to throw shade at anyone in particular. But I think if someone does that, that shows that they're only participating in this online because it's the hot new thing. It's a fad. You're looking for attention, but you're not willing to make a sacrifice in the way you consume products. Basically, people are not willing to put their money where their mouth is. That's the kind of people I cannot stand. Personally, just to make sure you guys understand this, or in case you don't know, in case you're like watching this because it's a Pokemon video in a sea of Fire Emblem videos, I have always been very particular about this, especially once I started making YouTube videos. Fire Emblem Heroes, I have huge issues with the gacha model, so I don't play it, and I will never ever pay money to get more characters in it. Pokemon Masters, same deal, fuck gacha, I'm not playing that. Fire Emblem DLC, it's generally scummy as hell, it's usually overpriced and not worth it. Usually I just wait to see if it's worth buying, but I've never really been convinced, and I've seen the DLC waves for 3 Houses, for Echoes, for Warriors, and I don't really own any other Fire Emblem game where I would even consider getting DLC for it, but those 3 are games I have played where I would say, yeah, DLC, not worth it so far. Fire Emblem Fates itself is a good example of this. I really did not like the direction Fire Emblem Fates took for the franchise, and the only reason that I'm able to let's play it is because a fan wanted me to play it and they sent me their copy. So I'm very grateful for that, but I'm very glad I didn't have to buy Fates and give them their money for what I consider to be, well, at least partially some kind of sellout. Not saying you're bad for liking Fates, I'm just saying I don't like it and I wouldn't spend my money on it just to send a signal, please make a different kind of game. And I really wish people were a bit more critical sometimes, and especially Pokemon fans. And this Dexit thing thankfully brought that out a bit, but it's only going to help if there's an actual drop in sales. And right now, I don't think there's going to be a noticeable drop in sales, unfortunately, because in the end, this is, I think, the biggest franchise in the world. Period. Nothing is going to stop Pokemon. There are some people online who I think really overestimate the impact that they have themselves and the people who agree with them. But I can tell you right now, this boycott alone is not going to do it. You might be in a bubble of people who, like you, are skeptical enough to maybe not buy the game, but let me tell you that for every one of you, there's probably at least 10 people who just want to buy the newest Pokemon game, and that's going to keep happening until those 10 people start to feel worse about it. Because as long as people feel good about buying it, they're going to keep buying it. And if those people are kids, let me tell you, that's going to take a long while. I think one of the reasons why people in their 20s, 30s, 40s maybe feel a bit colder towards Sword and Shield, not the only reason, but definitely part of it, is because the series just hasn't innovated much at all and has become pretty stale in its formula. But if you're young and you grew up with one of the later generations, then it hasn't gotten stale for you yet, so that feeling isn't really there. Not saying this is how every one of these generations feels, but I think it could be a factor. And whether you like it or not, this game is primarily aimed at kids. Pokemon is aimed at kids. There's a lot of adult fans out there, sure, but if you think you're the majority, I think you're sadly mistaken. Kids and their parents buying games for them are just not as worn out or as critical as you are, and you can't really blame them. I mean, kids are kids, and parents generally don't really know very well about these kind of things. They're not online all day talking about Dexit and that kind of stuff. So there's nothing wrong with liking a game that's aimed at kids. I've played Pokemon like in my later teens and early 20s and stuff, and even now I still play it online and stuff. But do keep in mind you are not the target audience for them. They will take your money if you want to give it to them, but they probably don't really feel the need to reel you in anymore, since you have been attached for the series for so long. They're better off aiming at their marketing at people that they haven't reached yet, as opposed to people who have been with the series for so long. And the more I think about this, the more I realize that their main strategy for keeping older players in the boat is just using nostalgia to their advantage. Like with the insane emphasis they put on Charizard, that's there for a reason. That's why Black and White were so heavily harkening back to Generation 1. I guess they just think that's low-hanging fruit of all the generations of players or something. That's how they keep the majority of them spending on Pokemon. I'm not saying you're bad or like a sellout if you like buying those games, if you like buying Black and White because it has Gen 1 stuff in it. But I do think it's a bit lazy on their parts and a little bit cynical of a take maybe. I don't know. Let me know what you think, but I think that's their strategy. But to sum it up, I am not buying this game. I recommend you do the same until you've seen just how good it is and then decide if it's worth your money. Realize that people who aren't buying this aren't just doing it to be entitled or because they hate Pokemon, but because they're just not satisfied with the product. Of course, people who are like sending death threats to Masuda or whatever on Twitter, those are just assholes. You should just ignore those. Those are not representative of everyone. Those are just a bunch of assholes. But realize that the only feedback that this company has reason to is a lesser amount of money. Please don't give people a hard time for buying the game and being excited about it, but you should be critical of it, especially if it's one of your favorite franchises. Now, let me know in the comments down below, do you agree or do you disagree with my assessments? Let me know if you're planning to get Pokemon Sword and Shield and the reason why. Even if you're not into Pokemon at all, I'm curious, I just want to know. While you're down there, check out that thumbs up button. I hear that if you press it, it turns into the color of the best Generation 1 starter. That's all. Go ahead, try it out. Peace. Bye.